So, hi everyone, and welcome to our next panel session, Building Student Entrepreneurship Ecosystem. So, my name is Harsha, and I'll be hosting this panel. Thank you to our amazing MCs for giving us the introduction, and thank you to our panelists for joining us. So, how are the three of you feeling? A good Sunday so far?
Awesome. It's been a
Awesome.
Sunday.
I can see the 9 a.m. faces on all of you. So, like, what time did you get up? Like, I've been up for like a long time, so 48-hour event. But what time did you guys get up?
About 8.
8, Grace?
About 45 minutes ago.
45 minutes ago? Okay, go ahead. Yeah.
I haven't slept. I'm currently in California, so it's still 6 a.m.
Oh my goodness. So you are a natural 48-hour enthusiast. We should all be taking notes from you.
Yes.
Thank you all so much for making the time to be part of this panel. I really love all of the work that you guys are doing simply because I find that entrepreneurship, especially for students, is not as much about an individual journey, but it's about ecosystems and it's about how those ecosystems interact, whether they are organizations within a university or whether it's you developing your own ecosystem for others to have access to the education that is best suited for them. So thank you all for joining. Do each of you want to go around? I thought we can do a round of introductions, but since we had an MC pair come in and tell us a little bit about ourselves, I thought we can flip it a little bit. And each of you tell me one fun fact about you to just get this panel kickstarted that would never appear in any introduction. Grace, do you want to start us off this round?
Sure, I'd be happy to. I was born in San Francisco, but I was only there for 10 days, and I've lived my whole life abroad outside of the US. Basically, my mother is Russian, and I grew up in Moscow, so I was just born in the US because my parents wanted to have me because of the quality of hospitals and also for the passport. Get in and get out, basically.
Okay, we wouldn't have seen that in the intro. Okay, I'll accept it. Very cool. James, do you want to go? Fun fact on you?
Fun fact, I think I may have told you this at some point, Harsha, but I haven't taken a warm shower in about a month and a half. I'm on the cold shower ice bath grind. It's my fun fact.
Okay, but it's freezing right now in Philly.
It is,
so
but it wakes you up and there's a lot of other benefits. So that's my life now.
that is terrifying, and you have obviously no love for yourself. All right, DM, what about you?
Awesome. Yeah. So I would say my fun fact would be I'm a child of no nation. So a little bit different from Grace here. So I was born and raised in a refugee camp in Tanzania, and my family is Congolese. Since I wasn't born in my country, I don't have a citizenship there. But also, since I was born as a refugee in Tanzania, I also don't have a citizenship there. So for I think about 19 years of my life, I just belonged to no one. So I'm UN kid. So that's my fun fact. Basically, for I think 18 years of my life until I got the US passport, I didn't belong to any country at all.
Okay, that is very cool. And congratulations on now being a citizen of the US. But I think you're all global citizens at heart, whether, traveling the world or have amazing stories like DM to blow our minds with. And last icebreaker question. Since the whole theme for this panel is about all of you being students who essentially assist other students in their learning, in their entrepreneurial journey, I just wanted to throw in this question. And in 3 seconds or less, just yes or no. Is it harder being a student in entrepreneurship because you're a student, or do you think people look at it or look at you with more hope, with more fear? What do you think is the perception of student entrepreneurship among all the other generations right now?
I would say that it's harder when you have, 6 classes and a business to run. But I think it's the perfect time to start because everybody actually gives you grace. You don't have to have it all figured out. You kind of have that excuse of being a student. I think it always has always worked on my favor.
Okay. But best of both worlds. Got it. Since you mentioned Grace, we shall go with Grace.
Yeah, I think it's an advantage being a student because you approach everything with a very fresh perspective, regardless of what industry it is, and because you don't have that 20 years of experience in a system that was always the same way, that it has always been, and so you can come in and you see what's wrong with it, and you don't have that precedence so you're able to change it and to just do something different.
Amazing. James, you've got to top these two. I don't know how you're
Yeah,
gonna do
we got one no, one yes. So I'll take the middle ground. I think it really depends. Does your status as a student give you some perhaps valuable perspective into the solution you're trying to solve? Then I think, excuse me, then I think it could definitely be a benefit. All things considered, the one thing I'll say is that it's, with the rise of so many university funds like Dorm Room Fund, Reddit Blue, Y Combinator, it's definitely a lot more common and probably a lot more easier to be a student entrepreneur than it was, say, even 10 years ago.
It was really funny. We actually started off this summit with a panel where we had a Wharton student who 30 years ago graduated from Wharton running a student project. And that student project has gone on to be one of the leaders in education today. And it's a billion-dollar company that has impacted millions of lives. And he said the same thing. He was like, when I started 30 years ago, nobody liked student ventures. Everyone hated them in a sense. And there was absolutely no way to get funding for it, no way to get support. So I think as a community and as an ecosystem supporting student entrepreneurs, we have developed so much over the last few years to as your points, all of three in a sense. It is much easier now to get support, like as a student entrepreneur. Which brings me to my first official question. Why entrepreneurship? All of you are involved in entrepreneurship in some capacity, whether it's leading a club, whether it's being an entrepreneur yourself. And that was an active choice that you made. I doubt all of you just looked at a list of things of like what I want to do and threw a dart at it and see where it landed. So why choose entrepreneurship in the first place? James, since we ended with you, do you want to go first?
Sure, let's do it. Yeah, I'm not sure if it was an active choice. I think I've just always been the hustler type. As early as my freshman year of high school, I was flipping shoes online or selling Supreme merchandise for a quick buck. I think I entered entrepreneurship more formally when I got to Penn, where I joined a startup of my own and got really involved in the Wharton Undergraduate Entrepreneurship Club. And yeah, just fast forwarding to now, I run WUEC, and I worked this past summer for a startup advisor group, and I'm looking to go into venture capital. So I think, in turn, like, I'm not sure if that was a conscious decision, but I think what really keeps me in the space is just my respect for people who are willing to take that risk. I think it's really hard to go against the grain, and I love supporting people who do that.
Amazing. Yeah, why don't you go next? I think, sorry. Yeah.
Awesome. I would say that one of the biggest things that I've always just enjoyed was creating new things, building new things, and really like finding innovative solutions to very like hard problems has been one of my biggest passions since like I can remember. And so I would say that like entrepreneurship to me, especially as someone who's a very, very curious person, has been the only thing that I believe that lets me be able to double in everything else. So I can double in engineering and finance. Like literally, you have to wear so many hats, and I love that so much about entrepreneurship because every day it's something new. But you also get a chance to actually change people's lives. To me, that's actually the most rewarding thing. But not just change people's lives, but change people's lives with other people. So I think one of the most rewarding thing about entrepreneurship is building like a team of or funding other people who are passionate at the same thing that you're passionate about too. And when you build that team and you have people that believe in that vision, and you're all working together, and it's the ups are amazing, and then the downs are like it feels like a really big, you're just getting kicked in the gut every day. But to me, that having those changes, I sometimes feel like maybe it's a little weird, but I'm low-key addicted to that. So yeah, so I would say the constant changes, and then just being able to have the freedom to literally do everything from product to design to, I don't feel like I'm constrained in some box in some way.
No, very, very well said. And Grace, do you want to add on?
Yeah, I mean, I was actually going to say something similar to Dieu with the concept of addiction, because once you start building something that's your own and you see it grow and you start to see it getting traction, that is just the best feeling ever. I mean, really nothing tops that. But my interest in entrepreneurship really started when I took a gap year between high school and college, and I worked at a startup briefly, and I honestly, I just really loved the founder. Like I had never met anyone like him, so determined and focused and crazy. It was just a whole other breed of humans, you know? So I figured, okay, when I get to Yale, I need to surround myself with as many people like that as possible and just attach myself to them. And once you do that, then you start end up thinking the same way as them, and it's it's just how it's the most fun.
No, I really like that answer. I love all those answers because I think it supports this underlying thread that entrepreneurship is about people. People is what inspires others, people is what drives others, people is what makes the world go around, essentially. And I think in entrepreneurship, at the least, having someone's vision or someone who can pull together a vision is what enables ventures to succeed or fail. And I think, in a way, each of you, as you develop your own communities, are that person for the community around you, whether it's the Yale Entrepreneurship Society, whether it's DM Your Startup, or whether it's the Wharton Undergraduate Entrepreneurship Club. To an extent, each of you have to play that role of the person pulling the vision together. So, moving on towards that, how have you gone on kind of how have you gone on kind of amalgamating all of these information that you've gotten from the different people that have inspired you, that you have seen as leaders, you have seen as brilliant entrepreneurs, and replicated that in yourself as a leader in your own community? Shall we start with DM since I keep putting you in the middle? You want to go first?
Yeah, sure. I always say that I walk on shoulders of giants, and a lot of the work that I do, I'm always reading books. I'm always listening to podcasts. I'm always, again, taking entrepreneurship classes. And so I think like one of the biggest things that I've really just really really embraced is this funds of knowledge. I create funds of knowledge from so many different people, understanding, like, so especially with me, like building a company in education. There's kind of this, like, a little bit of how would I say this, a lot of, like, let's say, like, venture capitalists, and like a lot of people really sometimes don't like education because it's such an old system that is so hard to change. And so I always feel like I'm always hitting a wall with a lot of the work that we're doing. But I think for me, the most rewarding thing is going into the books, figuring out what did someone else do to be able to solve this problem, and then grabbing that strategy and then trying it, and then maybe it doesn't work, and then grabbing someone else's strategy. So for me, that's another really, really fun part about entrepreneurship, is just studying what other people have done before to be able to create new path towards towards whatever goal that I'm currently working on.
Very cool. Grace, what about you? You mentioned part of it in your answer earlier that you had all of these amazing people, and that's what got you interested in entrepreneurship. So, how did you kind of utilize the experiences around you, and how did that make you the person you are today, leading this whole huge organization at Yale that inspires other entrepreneurs?
Yeah, so much of what I do is building on what other people have done before me and seeing them as an example and striving to be almost as good as them, because in my mind, like, they have done just such great things that I want to be at least close to that level. But basically, um, I make promises and I set goals for myself that if I didn't reach them, it would be embarrassing. Like I make it very public so that if you fail, like basically you really, really don't want to fail because then you're letting people down. It's that idea of not pressuring yourself, but trying to keep yourself accountable and to understand that you are impacting a lot of different people. So those are some of the things that motivate me to really push myself and reach the high expectations that I set for myself, is the fact that I'm impacting a lot of other people and that it's my duty to them and my responsibility to carry through what I promised them.
Oh my gosh, that's a brilliant strategy. It's like, I will just make this as public as possible. So if I fail, I really fail. Dude, how do you get over, like just on that point, how do you get over when you do fail in a sense? Because again, part of having that community is to cushion the fall of failure. I assume that you are a human being who has probably failed once or twice at something.
Yeah.
I don't know this. You could be perfect. You look pretty perfect. So what do you do when you fail then? And how do you rely on that support of the ecosystem to cushion that fall?
Yeah, I feel very embarrassed when I fail, but I also always, the result of that is less, it has less gravity than I expect. So like I can give you a very, very specific example, and this is probably one of my biggest failures so far. I made t-shirts for the Entrepreneurial Society, and I made like 500 of them and ordered them and handed them out to everyone. And this was during the beginning of the year when we were doing recruitment and, you know, huge amounts of marketing. And then like a month into that, I realized there's a typo on the t-shirt. I was so embarrassed, and it's totally my fault, like 100% my mistake. But honestly, not that many people noticed. Like not that many people told me about it, and it took me a month to even hear about it. So obviously, like I don't know, it didn't make a huge difference, but still, like we had t-shirts and people saw us, and I think it actually did help spread the word about our club because like everyone, I don't know, everyone saw the shirts, and I think they made a difference, even though they had a typo. But yeah, that's an example of very public failure.
Very, very good example. I have made so many typos and so many t-shirt misorders, so I definitely relate. James, what about you? You also mentioned having all of these amazing people in the ecosystem that you looked upon. And today I know you're an amazing leader at WEC, and I definitely think that you and Dawn, the other co-president, are doing a brilliant job leading the team. How have you positioned yourself and enabled yourself to be able to lead not just the executive board, but everyone in the club to be able to aspire for the team goals as well as their individual goals as entrepreneurs?
Right. Yeah. So sort of going off what Grace said, so much of what we do is, again, building off of what people in the past have done. And even outside of that, there's obviously a wealth of information that is useful to running any organization. But I think the key and where it all starts is just with self-reflection. I think every leader should really, once they're in that position, should seek to question your own past decisions, the decisions of past generations, and really look to fix things within your organization that are and aren't broken, and excuse me, and work together with your current team to really build out a new vision for the future. I think that's important. Looking towards other people outside your organization or other people who have been in your organization for guidance is great, but at the end of the day, you need to make sure that you have your own vision, and it's important to involve others in that process. I think brainstorming and high-level strategy is the best part of anything, so it's good to find ways to get everyone involved in that.
All right, very cool. One of the other things that I also wanted to kind of jump in on and talk a little bit more about was the idea of when developing the community itself. How do you make sure that you actually engage the right people and that you're able to attract and build out the people that will be the best team players to the community, will be the best contributors to the community. I think DM, you have something like 200 teachers in your community right now that you guys have on your app that you're kind of getting information on. Uh, Grace and James, literally premier organizations within your universities where people fight to compete to kind of apply and get in. How do you make sure, number one, you're picking the right people, and how do you make sure that the conversation afterwards is relevant for your needs as an organization to grow? So essentially, how do you find the right people? How do you make sure they're still contributing to the community after they're in? Who wants to go first? I'll let you guys pick this time. No?
I can go first.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's interesting I said. Wharton has a really competitive extracurricular landscape. And as you sort of alluded to, it does result in frequently a surplus or influx of applications. And it's an issue of, sort of weeding through that and choosing the people who are actually think will make a positive impact on your organization. And I think it really is just a matter of finding people who have the correct motivations, someone who's actually driven or who's actually interested in what your organization is doing and sees themselves, working within that context, as opposed to someone who perhaps has, for lack of a better word, maybe selfish motivations. So I think, it really starts with the recruiting process and, being very informed on who you're interviewing, and asking the right questions, like, why are you interested in us? What drives you? How do you see yourself working within this organization? I think within WUEC, we're really just looking for people who have a genuine interest in entrepreneurship and in our club. So it's a matter of really getting to know who these people are and sort of, trying to check their true incentives.
Very cool. Grace, what about?
And the last thing I'll say, and I'm thinking about it, is it's also about setting clear expectations when you're marketing your organization. You don't want to make it out to seem like your organization is something that it's not, because then when people join, they're gonna, they won't be as inspired to work with your work group if they had a misconception of what it was. So really setting those authentic expectations of what you do, what the time commitment is, and what everyone will get from it.
Okay, very, very well put. Grace, do you want to build on that? I think you may have some similar experiences at the very least. Very cool organization. Probably very hard to pick who gets in.
Yeah, actually, one of the most important things that I do is finding the right people to lead the different programs that we have and to expand on what I want to keep building within YES. It's so important because that defines the culture of the organization and how successful it is. Like everything relies on who we choose to let in and to run different initiatives. So I definitely see what James was saying about how you have to find people that are interested in the mission of the organization, but that's at the same time for me, that's not enough. I feel like, okay, so the only way to make people do something and to actually take action and lead a whole program and follow what they're going to do, to make them want to do it. You have the to in so much time into building something out. So a lot I do is actually making sure that the people that I bring in the organization feel like they are a part of it, they are, and I put in a lot of time into getting to know people on the team, relate to them. So for the first time this month, we had a retreat. We just went out for a weekend and just spent time with each other. And we social and other things to make sure that the people feel included and motivated to care about society, people that.
So I really like that point on culture and how you fostered that through doing retreats and all. I'm going to move over to DM for a second, but I think there's a slight audio issue with your AirPods on or something. So maybe you just take a couple of seconds to check that out. Meanwhile, moving to DM, while Grace sorts out her audio issue for a second. Um, DM, right now you have about 200 teachers, I think, on your waiting list. And Grace, I'm just going to put you on mute so that the audio interference doesn't kind of disturb. Feel free to unmute once you've got that sorted out. But yeah, one of the things that with onboarding a lot of people onto your platform is you are still running a pilot, if I'm not mistaken. So a lot of the people and the conversation surrounding it needs to be able to either show you the truth behind it, show you the truth behind how valuable the platform you're bringing is to the school communities, to the teachers, to the students that benefits from it. How do you make sure that the people in that community that are the right ones to be able to give you that feedback in a sense? So where did you even start getting all of these hundreds of people to know about the work that you do? And how do you then make sure that the conversation surrounding it is productive so that you can get the data and the feedback that you need to make sure that this ecosystem can grow productively?
Awesome. That's a great question. We have over 600 teachers actually on our wait list, and 90% of these teachers are all word of mouth. It's actually been very interesting how I was able to again be able to find, I guess, to kind of take it back. The strategy that I kind of try to use is finding where my tribe is at. I'm very, very specific of what kind of educator I'm looking for to be able to really especially be part of the first wave of teachers that we put on our platform. And I use the student hat actually. So what I did was I would just go on Reddit and I would just be on Reddit. Hey guys, I'm a student doing a student project, looking for, teachers, especially teachers. And, they love like the student project. And if they hear that it's just a student working on something cool, a lot of them are actually able to engage. And so I would just find again where the teachers are hanging out. So that was Reddit, that was Twitter. But Reddit I found to be really, really useful for me. That's where I was sending all my surveys. And especially really in the early stages of my customer discovery, I would just be like, hey guys, I'm a student working on this. I wouldn't even tell them I'm working on a business. Like this is something that another teacher gave me as an assignment. I'm just doing surveys for. And that really worked well. And from that, I was able to gauge again. I think I got at least 700 people as respondents on this Reddit thread that I created. And one of the things that I learned is that a lot of teachers were very interested in like actually learning more, because I had a little blurb at the end like, hey, if you're interested in this project of building authentic connections with your students, like click here and then I'll do a one-on-one with you. And so I had I think I had about 40 to 50 teachers actually sign up on my Calendly to actually come and speak with me. And what I did is like every one of them, I was like, I would get on there, here's what I'm working on. And I would just see the genuine care that they have. And I would just ask them, hey, do you know 2 other teachers? Do you know 3 other teachers that you can introduce us to be able to actually help us, really take this to the next level? The thing that I've been able, I think, to sell really, really well is, innovation is a team sport is what I usually, when I have conversations with them. And so I'm like, I don't want to build this for you. I want to build this with you. And that really excites them a lot. And that's why sometimes I feel like it's so much easier when I'm like, hey, introduce me to your friend. They're able to do that really, really quickly, because one of the biggest things that I go in there is like, I don't know anything. I want to learn from you. And I think that kind of creates that space where they can show up authentically and also be able to actually bring in other teachers to actually join the mission. So that's something that I've been able to really do really, really well, is just finding where these teachers are, and then really figuring out a really good strategy to be able to involve them authentically into what we're doing, and then asking them, because they know best, who's who's as motivated as they are into the work that they're doing. So I think that's a strategy that I've used really, really well to be able to build this massive, like again, 600 teacher wait list, with mostly about 90% of that being word of mouth.
I'm still stuck at the fact that teachers are on Reddit, but okay, very cool answer all in all. Definitely did not expect the teachers on Reddit part, but the 600 people on the wait list, the 40, 50 personal calls, all of that is super impressive as well. And I think that it goes, like as you said, it goes to show how much people are willing to come on board and support student ecosystems, especially when they feel they're involved. And that's essentially the whole idea of creating an ecosystem, isn't it? It's to get all stakeholders involved. And I think that kind of makes me want to move to the next question I want to talk about is how do you actually encourage stakeholder buy-in and participation from people who maybe aren't direct beneficiaries from the work that you do, but are still people who contribute towards making the ecosystem whole? It could be potential speakers. I think Yale Entrepreneurship Society and WEC have literally world-class speakers that come in, share their experience, share their expertise. It could be in terms of funding. DM, I know you had a seed round that I think went up to about 360,000 USD, which is absolutely fabulous. I think you raised from some of the biggest VCs out there, so amazing job, Techstars and the likes of it. And at the same time, I think all of you also have other stakeholders in the peripheral, whether it's administrators, teachers, people who are relied on for the infrastructure of the work that you guys do. So, how do you get all of these people to come behind and work on a single idea or make an idea happen when needed? Shall we start with James? I know that we have a lot of regulations at the club for some of the stuff that we want to do. I know that you work really hard with the teams on getting the speakers and getting a lot of even the funding in and all of that. So how do you make sure all of this is essentially comes together in a timely manner to make the projects and the ideas happen?
Sure. Yeah. So in terms of stakeholders within WUEC, we have, startups, funders, as certain regulatory personnel at Penn and so forth. And I think it all starts with just like networking. You want to make sure you know who all these people are. You don't want to just reach out to them for the first time when you need something done. So I think there's a bit of a hustle component to it. So if you're running an organization, you want to make sure you know everyone and every potential stakeholder and everyone who could potentially be involved in the organization. That's just a matter of constantly reaching out to people, meeting them, learning what they're working on, and actually, having a genuine interest in what they do. And then from there, later on, it's you reach back out when, perhaps you see some sort of potential partnership with them. And just to give examples, an example, I think, in the case of, let's say, WUEC is trying to bring on board a potential sponsor, I think in that setting, it's a matter of just really being able to articulate where you can add value and understanding what the person on the other side of the table wants, and just matching your capabilities to that want in an authentic manner, and without being too much of a salesperson. I think is the way we go about it.
Very cool. Great. Yeah, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I would say I really love what you said, especially about the authenticity part, because I think when we're building Pathway Ventures and we're going in fundraising from alumni, one of the biggest things that I learned really quick is being very, very specific around who you pick to actually go have these conversations, because some people had no idea what what VC funding was, although they were fairly wealthy, from maybe family farms that they own and all these other ways that they've been able to acquire their wealth. And so being able to really find people who you can have those authentic connections with, and also as you talked about this infrastructure, Harsha, earlier, I think like being proactive, and being able to, again, authentically like make them contribute without also putting too much pressure on them sometimes is another really, really good way to be able to kind of mitigate that.
No, very well said. And Grace, do you want to add on to that?
Yeah, and let me know if the audio is working okay. I think it should be fine now.
Crystal clear now.
Great. But something stood out to me about what James said about how you want to be reaching out to people, but also you don't ask them for something the very first time you do. And I can really relate to that. And because it's about building relationships with others, the same way that you're trying to build relationships with the people on your team. And again, it goes back to motivations. Why are the alumni interested in helping your organization? Or why does the school want to help you expand your reach? So for example, we had a really big event last Friday for alumni. So we invited a lot of founders and VCs back to campus, and we rented out a bar and basically had a happy hour with a lot of people in YES and the alumni, because I'm hoping that is going to serve as a foundation for deeper, meaningful relationships with the alumni that so far haven't been very included in our ecosystem. And then that way we can really keep maintaining that connection and actually create more conversations between alumni and current students. So for me, it's about, again, building that relationship and giving them reasons to actually care.
Giving them reasons to actually care. I think that's a really nice way to look about managing an ecosystem in and of itself. I think as we wind down, one of the last few topics I want to touch on, which we spoke about briefly earlier, but I thought it's good to circle back, is on kind of the setbacks and the drawbacks that occur when you lead a team, when you lead an ecosystem. One of the things that we often see is that no matter how well you plan, no matter how well something goes, there's always going to be one or two people who aren't happy with it, or a couple of people who maybe didn't have the best experience, whether it's in a student organization, whether it's in a startup, whether it's in a community. Now, because the work that you do, all three of you, is so community centric, how do you go about dealing with negative feedback? Whether it's people saying, I did not have a good experience with this, I want to quit, I don't think that this is going to be successful in the future, and all of that. How do you deal with this negative feedback? I assume you again, that you are human and that you have received some negative feedback, as most human beings do. And what has been your strategy to overcome it, and advice for those who are going through it right now?
I would say that not everything is for everyone. Is kind of where I would start with that. I think like as I've built, different organization, from running like student entrepreneurship clubs, the VC fund, and even also the current organization that I'm leading right now. I think not everybody obviously is going to see your vision and also be as excited about it as you are. I think the best way to be able to kind of is to take in and internalize the feedback that you're getting. And then once you take it in, understanding what context or perspective that person is coming from. I think being able to understand the context is really, really important. And so asking why, that's something that I always do all the time. Even sometimes when I'm fundraising, you get a lot of no's, like, no, I don't want to invest. But, something that I always try to ask is like, well, why? And then once they go deeper, and then I can really start to understand what is the thing that would make them say yes. Or maybe they're just not, interested in this kind of venture that I'm doing, and that's okay. So something that I always say is like, just try to get context, because context is going to help you really figure out how you internalize that information, whether it's like really meaningful feedback that you should be listening to, or maybe it's just kind of fluff, and maybe it's just not something that they're interested in, and that's okay too. Just again, keep moving forward if it's that. But again, and just again, creating that space where people can be able to come in and say, hey, here's how I feel, and then understanding the context of and where like that feedback is coming from, I think is really important.
No, I think it's a really important element to it, context in a sense. And as you said, not everyone is maybe interested in something. Not everyone may have, the same cup of tea, essentially. So very, very well said, and very nuanced, response. Grace, James, anyone wants to fight for the next right to speak?
Sure. I'm not sure if I have too much to add to that. The one thing I'll say is just leave your ego at the door. I think if you take things personally, you're probably going to end up just ignoring, the actual feedback you're getting. It's important to, just not do that. Do not take things personally and actually listen to the feedback you're getting and let that drive your future actions. And I love what you said about contextualizing that first, really understanding what the reason for it is and how relevant it should be in your future decision making. But yeah, I mean, you're never going to be perfect. I think it's nice to strive to be perfect, but there's always going to be people dishappy or with what you do or not in line with your vision, and that's fine. And that should sort of fuel you. You should always be striving to get 100% approval, but you're never going to get it.
Okay. Strive for 100%, but no, you're not going to get 100%. Okay, very good. Grace, what about you?
I guess the only thing that I would add is that if you're getting negative feedback, or if someone tells you, hey, maybe like this event would have been better if so and so happened, that's actually really useful information and really helpful to you as a leader, because then you can tailor that and change it for the next time. So all feedback is good feedback.
All feedback is good feedback. And that's a nice conclusion, I feel, to start wrapping up not only this question, but this discussion itself. I think one of the reasons why I was very excited for this panel is because, as I said earlier, no thing in entrepreneurship happens in isolation. Everything happens within an ecosystem. And all of you play a very important role for different communities to actually see that ecosystem, have support from that ecosystem, so that individuals can grow, individuals can learn, and hopefully contribute back their expertise as well. So thank you all so much for doing that within this panel session itself and participating, engaging, and sharing your words of wisdom with me and the audience beyond the screen. So thank you all so much for joining us. Any final words before we end our panel for today?
Enjoy the conference. This was amazing.
Those are the right final words. Thank you so much, Ian. Grace?
Harsha, you're a legend. Nothing else needs to be said.
Thanks for having me on, Harsha. Appreciate it.
All right. And with that, our panel has come to a close. And thank you all for joining us. And to our audience, please stay tuned. Continuing the discussion on ecosystems, we have another extremely important panel coming right up. But for now, passing it back to the MCs. And bye, everyone.